Hey guys, and welcome to a new video. Today I want to show you a very interesting way of building an Ignite build, and this time around it is kind of a project or prototype, as I called it, mbX prototype, because the usual way of building Ignite builds would just be like, fire damage, fire.multi and whatnot. But this time we built an Ignite build based around Nebulis. So Nebulis is actually an item that usually Aura Stackers use because they get maximum resistance and whatnot, right? And we know that Aura Stacker is dead. Until I found out it's absolutely not dead, it still works, and that's also the reason why I'm going to stop this build, because the best version of this build is actually an Aura Stacker. Good, but before we talk anything more about the build and how it works and why do we actually scale Nebulis to gain like up to 1200% increased damage and go into triple conversion similar to the Eternity Shroud to generate massive amounts of flat damage to then scale our ignites with some other sources, I think we're just gonna pop in one of a pure stone here. We are currently level 91. This build is just a complete prototype, it's not completely filed out, but I was working on the PUB for quite a long time, actually last 2 days or something like that. I don't know, countless of hours trying to get this thing going. And I went to a point where I said like, yo, this is actually very interesting, but in the other hand, I currently build it with Megalomaniac stacking, trying to get as many mana reservation efficiency for all the big auras, since we're using Hatred, we're using, at the moment I cannot even reserve Determination and Purity of Elements, but I found out ways to do it. So it's basically a Megalomaniac. I mean, the skill tree looks like an Aura Stacker. The difference between a non-Aura Stacker and an Aura Stacker is basically Aura Effect. So usually you scale RMR, at least Mana Reservation Efficiency, and Aura Effect to gain ridiculous amounts of effect out of your auras. This character does not use Aura Effect, but I still want to get all the auras that I need. For example, the Hatred for the physical is extra damage and stuff like that to benefit from all the goodies of the auras. But hey, as I said, we're going to explain in a bit. But first of all, map showcase. This is a pure toolstone or pure ash or something. And what we have is a wave of conviction, inflicting ignites, exploding them with the Asenath's touch, inflicting ignite with ignite proliferation thanks to the fanned flames to then make beautiful big chain reactions. And I think this is one of the... I want to wait until the timer goes a little bit down, right? This is one of the coolest Ignite builds that I've played so far, especially when it comes to the building of that build. But I also kind of said that in the end of the day, it's going to be another Aura Stacker, and I'm just not want to play Aura Stacker, and that's pretty much it. So all we do is just Wave of Conviction, and then just see shit burn. We actually have, at the moment, a double pro... Look at this clear, man. Hey, oh, it keeps on going! It keeps on going! What the fuck? How many screens was that? Holy shit. Dude, I'm always surprised when I run those Breachstones because of the nice monster density. How insane those chain reactions actually are. And these circles here are also an ignite. And when monsters actually walk into that circle, they're also gonna explode. Let me see if I can actually find monsters. Here, they just exploded because they are walking into the fire circle. So how many screens was that? I have no idea. Probably another 4 or 5 screens. This is actually the most ridiculous clear that I had in the build for quite a long time. And it's actually so much fun, it's so enjoyable, but the only thing that I don't like is I don't want to play Aura Stacker. I know it is that, or people say it's that, it's definitely not that, you just have to work your way around it. It's probably a bit weaker than in the past, but usually you also play Aura Stacker as a version of like, look at these chain explosions, dude. As a form of on-hit damage, like Arc, like Spark, like Patton's Brand, like all kinds of things. And this is actually an Ignite build, and this got me actually hooked in the first place, because I love my Ignite builds. I love my chain reactions, my explosions and whatnot. It's just a very beautiful build, and it's actually quite tanky. Probably you don't say that because you have 2000 ES, right? But this is just in the current version that is not finished yet. I should get up to like 4,000, 4,500 with ridiculous amounts of mitigation, calling it max resistance, CI, physical damage taking as element and stuff like that. And yeah, there is still... Oh wait, we can tank that. Okay, never mind me. So we are currently, I don't know how much I run, like 4 mil, 5 mil DPS or something. That was a pure stone. And my end version in PUB that I'm gonna link in the description below will actually have like 15 mil Ignite DPS, which is a ridiculous amount of Ignite DPS. I don't know if you ever played an Ignite DPS on a higher budget. I did with Fireburst, for example. Remember the full Elder version that I played fire burst like in Ultimatum League, I think, right? That had 14 mil, and it was probably the same amount of currency invested. This one is a lot more tanky and even out DPS's the fire burst version. Anyways, I'm gonna still go over and wanna tell you guys how I approached the build, what was my general idea, and why do I think it's best played as an Aura Stacker. Also, it will include the Aura Stacker version, basically. If somebody says, yo, this is the build that I've been waiting for all my league, I have like 5 mirrors on my stash, I'm bored, I don't know what to do, that's probably a very cool way to do it. Good, I would say we're gonna start off with the core of the build, Nebulis, as well as the Incandescent Heart. So, Nebulis, basically, more maximum resistance gives you increased cold damage and lightning damage based on how much you want to get. So the way I approach this, I'm scaling auras like Purity of Lightning as well as Purity of Ice, gives me max resistance on level 23, so I have +2 in my gloves, and level 21 Purities, gives me 5 maximum resistance, as well as some kind of aura effect to gain more maximum resistance, as well as stacking Megalomaniacs that have maximum resistance on the Prismatic Dance, for example, or something like, what is it? The Wizardry? Wait, Wizardry gives you 2 maximum lightning resistance, as well as Winter Prowler, if I can find it somewhere. Winter Prowler gives you 2 maximum cold resistance. So at the end of the day, what you want to reach is 90% maximum cold and 90% maximum lightning resistance. So if you would calculate that, the difference between 75 and 90 max resistance is 15 max resistance, and for each point we get 20% cold damage is 300. If we do the same on the lightning version, we get another 300, makes 600. Once we dual wield that, we're gonna get times 2 up to 1200% increased damage. And then we have the Incandescent Heart. This is basically the most important thing. Like, it has 2 versions, basically, or 2 good things. One is the elemental damage taken as chaos damage, which basically immunes me through that 25%. Since I'm running CI, I'm immune to chaos damage. So if I get a 1000 damage fire damage hit, 25% of that will be chaos damage. I'm immune to chaos damage, so I'm gonna just straight up mitigate, or not even mitigate, just straight up annul that kind of damage, right? And the next important thing is elemental damage taken, or elemental damage as extra chaos damage. What that means is the exact same stat that you have on like an Etherius Flask or the Eternity Shroud, right? Just Eternity Shroud has more power onto it. But what it means is, from every portion of your damage, you're gonna get a portion of chaos damage. And since we're playing an Elementalist, we're basically have all damage can ignite. Usually only fire damage can ignite, but as an elementalist, my lightning damage can ignite, my fire damage, my cold damage, my chaos damage, my physical, whatever damage it is, it can ignite, right? And this is how this actually works. So what it basically means, I'm converting 100% of physical damage into, I don't know, like I wrote down here a complete spreadsheet explaining the build, basically, what was my way of thinking, what are the mana reservation stuff that I'm using, right? So I want to like showcase this here. I'm having 100% physical damage because I'm using a physical spell. Wave of Conviction is that. I'm converting 100% into lightning damage. Thanks to a built-in, this is a little bit of a physical to fire, but I actually planned this to use as a penance sprint build, which only has 50% physical to lightning. And then I also have an Anomalous version here that gives me another 60% physical damage converted into lightning. So let's assume, if we just ignore the fact here that Wave of Conviction has a part of like a little bit of conversion as fire damage, but we convert 100% of our incoming as our physical damage into lightning, then thanks to 2 Call of the Brotherhoods with 48% lightning damage converted to cold damage, we're gonna get up like 96% cold damage out of our 100% lightning damage, and then we use a cold to fire support to gain fire damage as well. So why would you do that? The end of the damage is still the same, it's just percentage wise a little bit lightning damage, a little bit cold damage, fire damage, and so on. But every time we convert into an element, we're gonna get a portion extra chaos damage. So if you would calculate, let's say we have a 1000 physical damage baseline and we go into lightning damage, we're gonna get 20% of that 1000 damage as chaos damage, which is 200. Then we go into cold conversion, and then we get another 20% extra chaos damage from our cold portion, which is 192, and then we convert into fire with the cold to fire support. So at the end of the day, we're gonna turn the 1000 damage into 1400 something damage, which is kind of insane. And this will then be our base damage from our ignites, right? So the thing is, what auras do benefit me? Usually aura stackers would go like Wrath, like Sallow Tree, and all these kind of things. they don't work because spell damage does not scale ignite damage, okay? That means if I get Wrath, for example, gives me more spell lightning damage, but it is spell lightning damage. That means that would work for Arc, Spark, whatever skill I would use for the on-hit effect, but it will not scale my ignite. That's why I'm not using Zealotry, I'm not using Wrath. But if we take a look at Hatred, it gives me Physical is extra cold, which is a big damage increase because we are running a physical spell. Our base damage is actually physical before the conversions, and this will get added onto the other stuff then. As well, it gives me more cold damage. It's not more cold attack damage or lightning, spell damage or something. It's generic more cold damage. Hatred, insane damage. As well as Malevolence with more damage over time, increased damage with ailments and stuff. It pretty much sums up pretty ridiculously. Purity of Elements at the moment for the ailment immunity, as well as Determination for the extra armor and stuff like that. But whatever, for now. Good. That means that all of my damage, every time I convert into an element, I get a portion of extra chaos damage, so my base damage of my ignite will be quite high. And once we've done all of that, we're still gonna add a tremendous amount of percentage damage thanks to our Nebulis. And this is like usually... Like, if you check my tree, how many... This is, like, my only fire dot multi cluster here, and, like, 3 points over here with, like, overall dot multi, right? Usually, you would go, like, Breath of Flames. Breath of Flames is still insane, because there is multiple ways of scale ignite damage, right? Usually, it's, like, increased fire damage, elemental damage, burning damage, like, all kinds of increased damage. But since we get so much out of our Nebulis in terms of increased damage... that means that our fire dot multi that I don't have a lot will be as better as before, right? But for me, as the point investment, it was just not worth it to take that, right? Just as a small side note. Good. If we go to the next point, how do I actually be able, with the new mana reservation efficiency nodes, to actually get to this point, right? So if you go down here, I made an entire table here explaining basically how much effect does mana reservation efficiency have and why is it worse once we have a shit ton, right? For example, this is like the 3 different aura types that we have: 25%, 35% like discipline, purities, or 50%, for example, hatred, malevolence and stuff, right? So if I invest 50% increased mana reservation efficiency of, for example, like I have here, determination, or like what is this, hatred and malevolence, right? A 50% reservation would actually mean that my 50% aura costs only 33% mana, which is like a flat 16%, 16.67% less mana reservation, basically, right? If I would double the investment, going for 100, then my mana, my aura would basically split in half, would be 25. But the point from 50 to 25, basically, or from 50 to 100 mana reservation efficiency, would be 16 to 25, which is basically only an increase from 8%. That means the first 50 gave me a net reduction of 1667, while the next 50 only gave me an increase by 8%. So if I would go for 150%, I would only get a net benefit of 5% compared to the 100. So the more you invest, the less effective it's gonna be, right? So that means if I would compare this now, for example, with the hatred and malevolence, I have made here 2 versions. One has actually 100%, like 2 times mana reservation efficiency by hatred. That would mean that my hatred costs 25% and my malevolence costs 50, is a total of 75. If I would now think about, wait a second, I just learned that the more I invested, the worse it gets. So is it better to actually add 50% mana reservation to hatred and 50 to malevolence instead of 100 to hatred? And yes, it is, because the first 50 are going to have like the most impact. So if I put 50% on both auras, I'm ending up having 66% mana reserved instead of like 75, right? So so my idea was, okay, my auras are, for example, hatred, malevolence, determination, purity of eyes, lightning, discipline, herald of ash, and vitality. So if I add 1 stat of mana reservation on each of those, I would get the most benefit out of it. And that's why I went with the megalomaniac maniac, kind of like, I don't know. Just want to say kind of like, I don't know, the dead English. So I have a pretty insane amount of megalomaniac collection, as well as over here that like just have all the things that I need, basically, right? From mana reservation efficiency of my auras, maximum resistance to reach my Nebulis breakpoints, and I ended up taking those 6, which actually gives me almost like, I think I'm like off like 1% at the moment, but it allows me to get all my auras going, basically, right? So what I did is basically as I say, as I have here, one time I want to have any kind of like mana reservation if possible. So we have Discipline, Malevolence, like of every aura one single time. Plus, I want to get maximum resistance in the form of Prismatic Dance or Prismatic Carapace for the 1% max resistance, or we're gonna get either Winter Prowler or the Wizardry. Wizardry gives you 2 max Lightning Res, and Winter Prowler is 2 max Cold Res, right? So the way I did that, I have a ridiculous life search on Megalomaniacs, having all the nodes that I want to have on the build combined, and I want to search for ones that have actually all 3 enabled, right? This is bad because I was planning to get another version of Avoid Elemental Ailment just without Purity of Elements, but without a shield and without like Maven Orbed boots and stuff like that, it's kind of impossible, right? But as you see, there is not a lot. Even if I check offline, there is currently 2. Like this one, Elegant Form is the same, right? So I actually don't want to have Elegant Form in the current version, right? That means there would be 0. So it took quite a while. It was actually insane, and I bought all the stuff that I could find, then I find the perfect 6 cluster combination to make this possible, right? Good, at the end of the day, I was able to reserve all of that, as well as getting my max resistance going, but now I still have the problem that I'm lacking a bit of survivability. When it comes to survivability, why do I only have 2.3k ES at the moment? It's because I'm running Aberrant Tooths just for the better ignite spread. You don't need this at all because we have so much AoE as well here with the Unnatural Instinct, as well as the Elementalist node here that gives me another 60% increased AoE. Like running without, like with and without, I don't know if there is a difference, to be honest, because I have so much AoE that my, like global AoE, that my global ignite proliferation gets scaled by that, and it's like, it's big, okay? So I didn't really feel a lot of difference. But the only 2 sources of flat energy shield would be the helmet and the boots. And in my end version, I think I have like 4,500 ES, which looks a bit better. It's still low, but thinking about that we have so much maximum resistance, as well as CI, as well as taking Alias Chaos, which annuls the damage, as well as using multiple forms of physical damage taking as element. Like this character in the current form has like over 60 or 70,000 damage max hit. So I need to get hit for like 70,000 damage to actually be a one-shot. And the rest of it, I'm going to sustain through Vitality and other sources of like kind of Leech and stuff. Like everything comes together, right? But the problem is, today, once I've done like all my kind of PUBs with these kind of versions and the perfect Megalomaniacs and whatnot to reserve everything, I was sitting at 11 mil DPS. This is not the in-game version that I have, so I just want to replicate this here, right? I'm gonna give you the PUB of this version and the other version. But I said, like, you know what, once I reach 10 mil Ignite DPS, which is a tremendous amount for an Ignite build, I want to invest as much as possible for my defenses, right? And at the end of the day, I was saying, you know what, let's make another version, and instead of like getting all the mana reservation efficiency cluster, let's just make the good old Aura Stacker way and just go triple mana reservation efficiency plus introspection. And this basically 3 times, because this costs me less kill points than the Megalomaniacs, right? And it turned out with this new version, running a triple cluster here, 1 voices, I could reserve 3 more auras, which that being Purity of Fire, since my my current version has only Purity of Lightning and Ice, so this will actually give me 90% if you stack more aura effects. So I'm just gonna leave this. I don't want to build this any further, but the people that play Aura Stacker or have played Aura Stacker do know the deal about the aura effect, and to get this to 90%, right, for the extra damage from Nebulis plus the tankiness. Like this version does not only have a Purity of Fire to get like over like 20% or 15% more max fire resistance compared to my version, it will also be able to run the Purity of Elements to be ailment immune, as well as Purity, a Herald of Purity, which is more physical damage, the baseline of all my calculations, plus Defiance Banner. So it has like, I don't know, like 5 mil more DPS. It has like, what if you compare it, it has like 20,000 more armor. We have like 1,000 more energy shield. We have like a couple hundred more ES recovery and stuff like that. So this version here would kind of be not perfect, but very, very, very good and way better than the version that I'm playing here with my Megalomaniac session here, right? So, and that's basically the reason why I don't want to play this build anymore. It is extremely satisfying, it's extremely cool. I really like the idea of stacking, or at least getting the most damage out of your Nebulis, basically, right? instead of like the original form of Fire.multi and whatnot. So it's a very, very interesting project. But if I know that the best version is an Aura Stacker, then I just have to say, I'm sorry, I don't want to play Aura Stacker. And no, the Aura Stacker version would not play with March of the Legion, so there is literally the same way as I play this build here, and it's absolutely ridiculous on that part. Good. I hope that was a kind of informative kind of video. I still, even though I'm not going to finish this build, I still wanted to showcase this since I spent a lot of time creating this kind of version, and then finding out that it's not the way that I want to build if I want to make it min-max, but I still think it's a very cool project, and if somebody wants to make it even better, then feel free. I'm going to link you guys the PUB in the description. Alright guys, I'm going to go and go for something new, something... I'm not going to spoil or anything, doesn't matter. But I want to play something more ethical, something that is actually a real build and not just aura stacking. That's basically it. Alright guys, thanks for tuning in, thanks for watching, and see you on the next.